Our next guest is political commentator Sophie Corcoran, who was on the ground during the UK election campaign trying to salvage her local Tory from the inevitable election loss that has left the UK with the most socialist-leaning government in living memory. Sophie joins us now. Sophie, you're a young woman and this is your first Labor government that you can remember. Is it what you expected?
It's kind of sort of what I expected in terms of I always knew a Labour government was going to be bad because I did the intelligent thing and listened to my parents who have lived through one. A lot of young people, obviously like myself, have never really experienced life under a Labour government because the Conservatives would have come into power when we were sort of, 7 or 8. And before that, obviously, we're literal little kids, so we know nothing about politics. So I knew they'd be bad, but I didn't think they would be this bad. I mean, it's quite an achievement to be in there within, the first 30 days of a Labour government. And we've had riots, we've had, soldiers being stabbed, we've had little kids being stabbed, we've had police officers being attacked, we've had them cutting the winter fuel allowance for pensions, they've got rid of major infrastructure projects. I mean, it's quite an achievement to do this badly within the first month, to be quite honest with you. I didn't expect them to be that bad. Like, I knew they would be not great, but yeah, this is quite something. I don't think I've ever experienced the government being this bad before, to be quite honest. I'm still
You didn't expect the streets to literally be on fire, let's put it that way. But of course, that's what a socialist revolution looks like. We have plenty of history to show us this. In a recent Spectator article for us, you viewed by 250,000 readers, I might add, you said that Labor has lost control of Britain. Now, what methods is Keir Starmer using to retake control of the country?
Quite far, nothing other than pouring more fuel to the fire, which is quite interesting. I think if I was Keir Starmer right now, I'd do two things straight away. First of all, I'd sack my Home Secretary because she is quite literally the definition of useless and has disappeared other than having a media interview with none other than her own husband. Welcome to the really good British press. And of course, the other one is to sack another Home Office Minister, Jess Phillips, who also, again, poured fuel onto the fire. He's done neither of those things. All he's done is do really bad press conferences where he hasn't even been able to look up from his own notes every 2.5 seconds to basically just inflame tensions further. And he's obviously known as two-tier Keir now, which is probably going to be his legacy, definitely, and is known for having a scrap with Elon Musk as well. So good job, Elon Musk is doing great because we have no opposition in this country at the moment other than Elon Musk because the Conservatives have frankly disappeared because all of our brave MPs have lost. So we've got the ones that have got away with doing nothing for the rest of their lives being the only ones left in.
It's interesting you describe Elon Musk as the only opposition of Britain. That's a really good way to put it. I haven't heard anyone say that. But Elon Musk has done, as you said, and started the hashtag, or at least promoted it, two-tier Keir. Now, on the ground, is that what people feel? Do they feel like, not just now, but for a long time, policing has been not equal for everyone, shall we say?
Yeah, I think that's been the case for quite a long time. And I think a lot of people are saying that the Southport stabbings are the catalyst for this. I don't actually think that's true. I think the catalyst is this, is just prior to that Southport stabbing, we did actually have a few more riots prior to the main riots, but they were obviously a different type of perpetrator. So that happened in Leeds and it happened in Whitechapel. And those people haven't been, thrown into prison as quickly as these guys have. Well, we had the two Muslim guys in Manchester Airport that quite literally broke a female policewoman's nose, and they're still out on bail. So we've got, people who are being arrested for tweeting and retweeting, but we've also got people who have quite literally beaten up police officers and were almost actually kind of painted as these national heroes and are still out on bail. And everybody sees those videos, and that's really what's inflaming the tensions, is how differently people have been treated.
I'm pretty sure I also saw an article coming out either today or yesterday that about 400,000 petty crimes, that is theft, break and enter, assault, have no perpetrator identified and will be closed without being resolved or even attended in some cases. That's a lot of crime that people come into contact with and know that there's no justice served. So when they see teams of police dedicated to pouring through social media to arrest people for mean tweets and memes, they're seeing like crime not being policed, Twitter's being policed, and then Keir Starmer wants to release 40,000 criminals onto the streets to make way for the thought crime perpetrators. Now, this just seems to be absolutely crazy.
It is. I think, and the more we sort of think about it, the more I talk to people about it, I'm like, surely this is just nonsense. Like, how is my literal government, like, because the UK, we've sort of, we've had good PMs and bad PMs, but we've never had like crazy prime ministers. Like you guys in COVID embarrassed yourself on the national stage and were ridiculed by pretty much most other third world nations for being absolutely bonkers in the way that you guys are being treated. And I just thought, at least we've sort of never had a prime minister that is quite literally bonkers. But no, I take that back, because we do. And he's quite literally embarrassed us across the world. And I was like, oh, we've never really experienced that in Britain. We've always sort of been, both of our prime minister options have sort of been either side, and they've all been sort of sensible until now.
Yeah, now you know how we feel, Sophie, with our state premiers running around doing super embarrassing stuff on the world stage. Look, you've written about the economic disaster facing your generation, but I've been speaking to other Conservative commentators, and their top fear right now is that they'll be arrested for comments that they've made on social media. How would you rank your concerns, Sophie, following the election? Is your fear still being in poverty, or are you now more worried about what you do and say online?
I think it's sort of a bit of both. I'm a little bit worried that we've got this for the rest of the 5 years, because it's been 1 month and the UK has literally descended into complete utter chaos. People being arrested for tweeting is quite authoritarian, but in the same time, massive amounts of violence. Pensioners are being, basically sacrificed. So they've cut what we call the winter fuel allowance, which keeps our pensioners warm. They get a £200. And it's if they, earn under a certain amount, they get a £200 winter fuel allowance. Well, all pensioners get a £200 winter fuel allowance, but now the government have cut that for most pensioners unless they earn under a certain amount. I think that certain amount is literally about £10,000, which is nothing if you live in the UK. It's quite expensive to live in the UK, in order to save money. So that saved the government about 1.7 billion, because they claim that there's a £20 billion black hole. But in the same breath, they've literally committed to sending £11.7 billion in overseas climate aid, £10 billion on a public sector pay rise, giving some public sector workers a pay rise of up to 22%, which is like 10 times the rate of inflation, or 11 times the rate of inflation.
So Sophie, hang on. So let me just make sure I've got this correct, Sophie. Your government is sending billions of pounds overseas for climate aid because it's too hot, while their pensioners can't have their allowance to heat their homes because it's too cold.
Yeah, so pretty much our government views foreign bureaucrats, asylum seekers and public sector workers as being far more important than literally keeping our pensioners alive.
Yeah, that sounds pretty on par for
ludicrous.
That sounds pretty on par for the government. But look, you've also said that you miss the Tories, and I totally understand it. But the Tories are still there. There's plenty of seats being filled by the opposition. What is the Tory position on what's happening now with this whole free speech breakdown and, riots on the streets? Have they been quiet, or do they support Starmer's position?
They've been pretty quiet. I think most of them are too distracted and trying to make themselves become the leader of the Tory party. But again, I kind of knew this would happen, and I was telling people the reason why you shouldn't vote for Reform is because you're going to get a Labour supermajority, and Reform are only going to get 4 or 5 MPs, which they did. And of that, of course, Farage is too focused on things like the US politics or whatever. And one of their Reform MPs I met the other day literally has not really got a clue what they're doing. Never been in politics before, no idea what they're doing. So again, there's probably 2 or 3 of them that can provide any sort of opposition. And you've got, a block of well over 100 odd Tory MPs, but all of those MPs are the ones who are in safe seats, who are a bit wet, who have gotten away with not doing anything and are able to still keep their job because of this type of seat that they're in. And those are the sorts of Tories that we've got left. So they're not forming any sort of solid opposition, because we've got rid of all of our really brave, properly strong right-wing Tories MPs, because there were a lot of them, but they were all backbenchers and they were all in seats with majorities like 2000 that unfortunately, no matter what they did, the tsunami was too strong. Unfortunately, they got swept away. So now we're left with a bunch of Tories that just being quiet on this. I'm like, how are you not? This is almost, as bad as it sounds, this is perfect for the Conservative Party in terms of getting back into power in the next 5 years, because Labour are literally scoring own goal after own goal after own goal. I mean, it's a disaster. There's nobody in this country, even if you're the biggest Labour fan, that can say this is anything but a disaster. And yet there's no credible opposition.
Basically,
I'd be taking them to task day after day after day.
Basically, it's an apocalypse for politics, really, is the worst possible outcome is what you're having to live with for a long time, because your election cycle is longer than our election cycle in Australia. Now, you mentioned the media, and you wrote an article in defence of Elon Musk, which was great. They want to arrest Elon Musk. There's a whole stack of journalists who are going, let's frighten Elon by setting him an arrest warrant. They want him in jail, which is extraordinary. The media isn't exactly leaping to the defence of free speech, Sophie. Are you worried that if Elon Musk is not able to fight off these attacks against free speech, that the whole thing will just fold in and we'll lose the ability to engage in free politics and therefore win another election?
Yeah, of course. I was speaking to Dan Wootton the other day, and we were kind of talking about the carnage that's going on in our own country. And everyone was and a lot of other right-wing commentators, we were all chatting about it, and we were saying that we're actually genuinely worried that we aren't going to be able to politically operate in the UK without being arrested. And we're not people like Tommy Robinson. We're far more, towards the centre right than people like Tommy Robinson. But this arresting is being absolutely so extreme on so many levels. And funnily enough, I saw a post, an article from the Telegraph from 2013, and none other than Keir Starmer was quite literally saying that the department, when he was head of private prosecutions, that they should be sort of wary about over prosecuting people for Twitter because of the damage that it would have on free speech. He quite literally said that, and it's in a Telegraph article in 2013. So I don't quite know why he's changed his mind, because the same thing applies. Over prosecuting social media is damaging for free speech. But there is sort of no criticism here.
No,
on any of this. It's because we've got a super majority. There's nothing we can do. They're even threatening to arrest foreign Twitter people that are criticising the UK. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous.
They want to come after people like me. I'm like, you're never going to drag me out of Australia. I'm surrounded by magpies and tarantulas. You've got no chance. Look, Sophie, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much for joining us on Spectator TV. And coming up in just a moment, Michael DePercy on the latest crazy stories, including a new plan to use digital ID at the pub. Remember when they said the scheme would be voluntary? We'll be back in just a moment.